Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to resilience, business continuity, emergency management, communications, and something we're going to talk about today, uncertainty. You can see by the screen today, I welcome back for our September discussion, Regina Phelps. Regina, welcome back.
Alex, it is so great to be with you. Happy fall.
Yeah, my favorite time of year. I love the fall.
I love the fall. So, how nice that we're having a conversation about uncertainty today.
Yeah, uncertainty. The only thing certain about fall is my birthday. That's why I like
Oh,
fall.
when is that? What's your birthday?
November 8th.
November 8th. Oh, good.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like that.
yeah. Yeah, you're
Mine's
right though.
September 8th, so we should be able to remember each other's.
Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, well, belated happy birthday.
I love it. I love it.
Uh, you mentioned uncertainty. I know when we were chatting before we started recording, we were just going to start kind of talking about what we would talk about. And I thought, you know what, let's just start recording and jump
Yeah.
right into it because right now there is an unbelievable amount of uncertainty with well in the world right now.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And I woke up thinking about what we were going to talk about today and just in reading every day I read maybe 7 or 8 publications, not wall to wall, of course, but throughout chunks and sections. So I started with the LA Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, the New York Times. I read looked at the Guardian, the Washington Post, Bloomberg, and The Economist. And every theme of every one of those publications was about uncertainty. And the Economist really laid it straight out. It's like there is such uncertainty in the air, really created by the administration and the United States government, really having such a rippling effect around the world. And I have kind of a list of things I want to just sort of throw out for us to consider. And I want to circle back as we go through our conversation today, why that's so important for all of us. Um, so all of a sudden, the United States, who has been a reliable partner for democratic governments around the world, has become suddenly somewhat unreliable. And we have seen and talked about what that's created for us, right? I mean, our northern neighbor, our best friends, right?
Yeah,
We're throwing you under the bus, right?
yeah.
And so that uncertainty is unbelievable. And I think we're really seeing that in so many different ways. I mean, any Canadian person I meet or talk to or friends of mine, it's like I always feel like I have to apologize right at the beginning of a conversation, even though I might have apologized already 100 times, but I still feel that need, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I know, because of that uncertainty, people just aren't going to the States. Like the tourism industry I've seen in the US is just tanking. Like Las
yes.
Vegas is suffering. A lot of the border cities are suffering. And it's not just Canadians not going, but I know people in the UK that had planned to come to conferences actually in the UK, one that you were just recently at. And they said, no, we're not going because we're not the right color skin,
Mhm.
or any, they have dual citizenship. This is the first time I'm saying this on the show. I had an issue, I guess it would be 2 years ago, with a conference in Orlando, that where they asked for a boarding pass, and I had my hands full with phones and wallets and, you know,
Right.
knapsacks and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And my wallet opened up, and there was my Canadian citizenship card because I was born in Britain. And I have dual citizenship. I have two passports. They saw that and they pulled me aside and questioned me and said, how do we know you're not going to do something, which I can't imagine what, under your
Right.
British passport? I don't know how a passport has anything to do with that, but apparently it does. And they wouldn't let me in. I had to go back and get things organized and come back in under my Canadian, of which I was traveling with anyway. So I already had an issue. And so that's going to be recorded somewhere. So I know if I go across the border, they're going to pull me aside again.
Right. Right.
So now I'm not going to the US.
Yours was simply resolved, right? In
Yeah.
many ways. Right? But you can imagine somebody else who might be the wrong colored skin. how that really could impact somebody. So I think that kind of uncertainty, and you mentioned tourism and things like Las Vegas. I mean, the economy impact in Las Vegas in particular has been reported widely in probably every news service in the United States and certainly around the world. But we're also seeing that in, say, for example, California, which is a popular destination for a lot of Canadians, let's say,
Hmm.
and other people who are deciding that we're not a great place to go visit. And I can't blame them one bit, right? Because who wants to have that kind of harassment or be even just fearful if you're going on vacation? My goodness.
Yep.
So I think that uncertainty is unbelievable.
And Florida is hurting because
Yes.
the snowbirds, for people around the globe who might not know that, snowbirds are what we call the elder Canadian population who don't like the snow. So they go down to
Imagine
Florida
that.
for the winter months and have a place there, a condo, or rent something. They go down there for a few months and live the winter months in
Right.
Florida. They're not going now. A
Right.
lot of them are starting to sell and they're looking for places in other destinations. I've heard Dominican,
Mexico,
places like that, or
Jamaica.
they're going to the west coast of Canada, where they don't get as much snow, or at least in Vancouver.
Yeah,
If
right. It's a little
you're in the
warmer.
interior, different, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
When I think about that, I also think about the uncertainty, and I think about the fear, and then I think about how we've really pulled back a lot, the United States, from the international stage. And you've certainly seen that front and center with the Ukraine war is a good example of that, where, Trump was supposed to solve the problem in day one. And of course, I don't know how many days we are into his current
Mm,
term, but
10.
yeah, it's still going on. And he keeps saying he's going to put sanctions on Putin, but doesn't. And so the Ukraine war just drags out and more people get killed. And, that is horrific to me. Um, I mean, we should be standing up for democracy worldwide. Other things like the impact about things like the 50% tariffs on Brazil based on the Bolsonaro verdict, of which Bolsonaro, who is a similar character, if you will, to Trump, who actually his supporters staged a coup like January 6th when he lost the election in Brazil. And he's also uh, putting sanctions, if you will. I don't think sanctions is the right term, but some sort of disciplinary and financial requirements for any member of the Brazilian Supreme Court who have been allowing all of these things to occur. As far as approved, essentially when there's been issues raised, they basically have really pushed it forward. So that's also unnerving. And so in the United States, we're going to all of a sudden see coffee prices, as I understand. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't know, but it
Mm.
literally have already doubled in the US. So, right? So I imagine you guys will get some really good coffee out of this in
Well,
Canada.
hope so. I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I don't want to pay twice as much for it.
Right, exactly. And so we here will very shortly, and I understand from people I know who are coffee drinkers, are already seeing that in Starbucks and other coffee places where they purchase coffee.
Yeah.
And then I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, no, I was just agreeing with you. So,
Yeah. And then the other thing that's really been frankly frightening me a little bit is in the last 10 days, there's been two incursions of Russian drones into both Romania and Poland. And they were, I surprised they didn't actually shoot them down, they chased them out. I don't know why they didn't shoot them down. Maybe that would have been perceived as an act of war, but and we didn't say or do anything at all.
mhm.
And I find that disturbing with Russia, who remember invaded Ukraine. And now there's lots of studies or reports about maybe this is testing. I've seen that a lot in The Economist and in the Financial Times, where they're like speculating, okay, is this poking to see what happens? And then I think like, oh my God, does this mean we're going to have another war? I mean, like a real large war,
Mhm.
which is, of course, something that would be incredibly concerning. And
It would,
so
yeah.
I'm worried about that. Are you hearing anything about that in Canada at all, about these incursions?
Same things. I know a few people that live right here where I do that are Polish, and they were talking about that. And Poland, I think it was drones as well, and they did shoot down a couple of drones.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
uh, and the jets, I think they did chase them out. Estonia was the other place where uh,
Mhm.
they had jets. And I've been to Estonia, and every Estonian I know there that I met there, shall we say, did not have anything good to say about Russia.
Mhm. Well, the Baltics,
So,
my
so
gosh, they have been, yeah, they're right next door. I mean, right next door. Well, I'm sure you're aware that Finland is an example, and maybe the other Baltics as well, have actually removed themselves from the landmine agreement, the international landmine agreement, because they have actually literally peppered their entire border with Russia, not only with really significant fencing, but landmines. I mean, like a large distance of landmines all the way along, because they're fearful for a Ukrainian kind of invasion.
now I've heard the same thing. I think it's Poland who did that
Mhm.
along their, starting to do that along their eastern border as well,
Mhm.
with Belarus and with Russia.
Right. Well, Belarus and
So,
Russia are like the same thing, right?
yeah,
Anymore. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think those kinds of things I find deeply unnerving as well. And again, the United States historically would have been standing up to that. They would have been calling out Putin um, about his attempts or his sort of poking at those two other countries. I find that an issue. The other things that are going on in the US that are also concerning that could impact everyone in the US would be two things. One of the really the punitive actions towards universities,
Mhm.
which have resulted in a huge number of grants being removed. And you may say, well, who cares, what happens in a university? United States is unusual in the sense is that really in the last 50 or so years, most of the major research that is done, funded by the government, is actually done in universities. And so whether you're talking about cancer research, Alzheimer's, heart disease, even developing of medications and other treatments, a lot of that is done all in private universities, and those are through grants through NIH, the National Institutes of Health, or others. And so the fact that those have really been curtailed and pulled back, and there's just a lot of suppression, if you will, about universities, whatever they're calling about their anxiety about them being maybe liberal leaning or more liberal leaning than the administration,
Mhm.
which has really led to I'm sorry, go ahead, because I want to
I was
change.
going to say, and that's going to hurt people in the future when, we're seeing it now, more measles out there. But then because we pulled people back,
Right.
there's isn't the vaccines out there anymore, or there's isn't the healthcare services out there anymore to make sure these people are getting vaccines
Yeah.
because vaccines are bad. Well, if vaccines are bad, why is measles suddenly making an appearance again? Why is polio suddenly coming back again?
Yeah. And that's going to become a huge issue. I'm deeply concerned that what's going on currently right now with RFK Jr. and the HHS and through the different organizations in HHS. One of them is ACEP, which is the committee that actually authorizes vaccines. They're actually re-exploring all the vaccine schedules. They're discussing about removing many of them. Um, and again, just as you pointed out, things like measles, things like polio. I actually imagine that this continues on, that pretty soon countries around the world, if a US citizen goes there, one of the things that they're going to have to produce is a vaccine document about what they actually are vaccinated for, because they're
Mm,
not going to know whether we are vaccinated at all anymore. And that's really concerning, right?
yeah. I guess the positive side of that is some of these other countries are going to have an increase in vaccine rates
Right.
and see their measles or polio or
Hmm.
a whole myriad of things come down because
Which
they
would be
will
great.
get better,
Mhm.
hopefully,
Mhm.
better health care. And really, that's where people are going to look.
Mhm. Mhm.
They're going
Mhm.
to look to them now
Mhm.
for the research in universities or through different agencies. They're not going to look
Mhm.
at the businesses or companies here that do that in the pharmaceuticals that do that in the US anymore.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that very much. And I think when you look at all of this, the other thing that's really started to happen now in the US, based on very recent events with Jimmy Kimmel and a few others, is that there's this really significant move towards the suppression of free speech, which has always been an important um, attribute of the United States and always held strongly by all parties. And now there seems to be a huge pushback about that. And so that is also concerning when you think about what our Constitution is about, when you look about our Bill of Rights. Number one is looking at the issue and the ability for free speech. And so that I find to be also concerning.
I want to talk about that in our next segment, actually, because we've actually come to the end of our first one already. I want to talk about the free speech and how that is affecting workplaces, because
Yes.
I've started to hear a couple of things recently that I want to talk to you about that's going to impact, resilience professionals, risk professionals,
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we're talking with Regina Phelps today, and we will be right back.